All right, everybody, we're going to come to order. Okay, everybody, it is 6 p.m. It is March 1st, 2023. This is the meeting of the Transportation and Circulation Commission, City of Lafayette. I have to get used to their echo.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start with a roll call. Bart,
Present.
Stella,
Present.
Greg,
Present.
and Vianney is just joining us, so come on up. But I see these here, so we have a quorum. I'm Carl DiGiorgio, serving as chair. While Vianney is getting set up, I wanted to talk just real briefly about the change in format. As many of you have read in the Lafayette website, as well as the newsletters, we're now in a hybrid mode. The state of California insisted that we all come back for public meetings, which is a good thing. And so I have some brief ideas or notes for you. As a courtesy, members of the public may participate remotely in this meeting. Please refer to the meeting agenda for information about how to log on. If you're on YouTube right now and you want to go to Zoom, you can do that. Any person can address this commission on any item on this agenda. And there's also an opportunity for items that are not on the agenda. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes, and you'll given one chance for comments. In other words, we don't want to have people speak twice. Remote participants on Zoom are only afforded the opportunity to speak with audio. They are not allowed to see their video, and they're not allowed to share any screen sharing. And then finally, the city cannot guarantee the public's access to teleconference technology that it might have problems. So if the option for the public to participate remotely is only a courtesy, if technical difficulties arise for participants using Zoom, the meeting will continue unless required by the Brown Act. Okay. Now, for those of us in person, a few things that if you haven't been to a meeting in a long time, there are speaker slips at the back table. If you want to speak on an item, please fill out a speaker slip and put it in front of Therese over here with her hand raised. For my fellow commissioners, I'll remind you that there is a mute unmute button on your microphone. When you press it, it'll show green, and you can be that way. That way that people on the recordings will be able to hear your answers. Okay, enough of that. So anybody want to make changes to the agenda? No? Okay. Motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Okay, second.
I second.
Okay, Vianney, Bart,
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes, and I'm
Stella.
I, it's yes, Stella. So no changes to the agenda is adopted. All right. Item 5, if you're following along on Zoom, item 5, public comments. This is the opportunity to talk about items that are not on the current agenda. So in other words, not Burton Valley. If there's something else that you want to talk about. Are there any slips for anything? Public speakers, items not on the agenda?
I'm sorry.
And while Therese is looking, if you're on Zoom and you want to speak about something that's not on the agenda, please use the raise hand feature.
No, Mr. Chair, they're all for item 7A.
Thank you. Are there any hands raised on Zoom? I mean, on Zoom.
No, I see no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on now to new business. This is This is the Burton Valley Pilot Project. This is item 7A. I hope that everybody has had the opportunity to review the staff report and on the online materials. There's also a dedicated web page for this project. Patrick, were you gonna take us through this report?
Yeah, I've
And-
got a
and-
presentation
Yeah,
that I think the folks in the back are going to put up on the screen.
Yeah.
And there it is. Okay,
all right.
so thanks everyone for joining us for the new post-pandemic world. It's good to see people in person here. My name is Pat, and meet some of you face to face. Thanks. My name is Patrick Ollier. I'm the relatively new transportation program manager here for the city of Lafayette. I've been here in this role since last summer. And so although I wasn't around during the planning process for this project, I'm looking forward to working with this community on some information sharing tonight, and then later determining what elements of the project will remain on your streets. Next slide. As many of you are aware, in 2021, the city initiated an extensive public process in response to requests from many in this community over the years to improve traffic safety throughout Burton Valley. And in particular, a Safe Routes to Burton Valley Elementary pilot study was encouraged by some to improve multimodal safety and to encourage walking and biking throughout the community, including to and from Burton Valley Elementary. And the two primary issues that were raised and discussed were vehicle speeds and the lack of a pedestrian and walkway and space for cyclists. In 2021, a total of 4 public meetings were held to discuss options to provide a more balanced transportation network in Burton Valley. And through that process, and which was later affirmed by City Council, a number of traffic calming measures were approved for installation with the understanding that the measures would be reevaluated after a 1-year time frame. And so here we are a year plus later, and as committed, we're returning to you at this point to share information about the evaluation and discuss the final next steps of this project. Next slide, please. So what's on the agenda for tonight of this presentation? First, we'll review just a quick review of the measures that were installed as part of this project in Burton Valley. Next, we'll share results of the data collection and the evaluation effort. And I've got Allison Mills from Tool Design Group who will help us take us through that. In addition, for the third item here in the August 2021 council meeting, council directed staff to explore options for a permanent walkway in the community, which we have done and which we'll review. And then finally, we'll discuss the next steps in the process for the pilot project. And so this is the purpose for tonight's meeting. I do want to emphasize no decisions about what elements will remain on the streets will take place tonight, as tonight's meeting is intended as an information sharing session, as we committed to do back in 2021. And then I also want to mention importantly that we are not considering any additional measures either. So we're here tonight to talk about the existing measures that were installed as part of this pilot project, and then the concept design for the permanent walkway. Next slide, please. So as you're all likely aware, as a result of the direction given to us by this commission and our city council, a number of traffic calming measures were installed in 2021 on streets throughout Burton Valley. And I'm just going to very quickly review those. Next slide. A total of 11 speed humps on Burton, Lucas, Michael, Silverado, Marywood, and Rohrer drives. Next, please. Delineators that were installed at the edges of the speed humps throughout the community. And so just as a quick introduction, the speed humps were initially or were constructed in the travel lanes. So within those edge lines that you see there. And that was done mainly to leave the shoulder or the parking lane open for pedestrians and cyclists. The result of that was that there was some unsafe driver behavior with some drivers using that shoulder area to try to drive around the speed humps. And so in response, the delineators were installed subsequent to the construction of the speed humps to address those safety concerns. Next step, slide. And this is just a closer up version, photo of what those delineators look like and the space provided in between them. Next, please. There are part-time restricted parking zones on portions of Burton, Silverado, Marywood, and Rohrer. And these were installed to provide car-free space for pedestrians and cyclists on streets without walkways. And these parking restrictions are in place on weekdays, aligned with the school year, and also aligned with the drop-off and pickup times for Burton Valley Elementary. Next, please. There were permanent no parking zones that were installed roughly 15 to 20 feet in advance of the crosswalks. And this was to provide visibility of the pedestrians. Next, please. On Silverado, the lane widths were reduced slightly through the use of the striping, and that was done to encourage slower speeds on that street. And the result of that were slightly wider shoulder areas. Next, please. Markings and delineators were added at several locations throughout the neighborhood to emphasize lane lines and help to guide drivers around these curves. And these were done at several locations where drivers historically cut the corners or drove into the shoulder. Next, please. A stop sign was added on Indian Way at Marywood. Next, please. Right turn only signs were added from Burton Valley, the driveway there onto Marywood. Next, please. And finally, several crosswalk enhancements were installed as well. And here's two examples of that. On the top, a fourth leg of the crosswalk was added at the Burton, Silverado, Lucas, and Somerset Drive intersection. And then the bottom photo shows the ladder striping that was installed in the school crosswalk at the intersection of Silverado and Marywood. Next, please. So why were these measures installed and what are we hoping to achieve? In short, the project was designed to respond to the following concerns that were expressed during the planning phase of the project. And this includes goals to reduce vehicle speeds, to encourage opportunities for walking and biking within the community and in particular to and from the school, and then to improve the perception of traffic safety. Next, please. So I had mentioned that this is a pilot project, which means that some of the measures that were installed as part of this effort will now be considered for possible removal or retention on the streets. Those measures that we're here to discuss include the speed humps, the 11 speed humps, the delineators at the end of the speed humps, and the part-time parking restrictions. All of the other measures that I had reviewed are standard design treatments on roadways within Lafayette, and so those will remain. And that includes the roadway striping, the parking restrictions, the full-time parking restrictions at the crossings, the crosswalks themselves, and the stop sign on Indian Way. So these three elements up for consideration can be considered individually, meaning that, as an example, the direction to retain or remove the parking restrictions can be considered separately from the speed humps. Next, please. A few additional points about these measures. So staff recommends that all of the speed humps be considered jointly rather than individually. Thus, either all of the speed humps will remain or be removed. And this is because they were designed and cited as a package to help manage consistent speeds throughout the neighborhood. So if some, but not all of the speed humps are removed, we might expect some traffic diversion to happen and variable speeds on the streets within the community. And finally, the delineators that were added at the ends of the speed humps to provide space for walkers and cyclists without the safety threat. If the community decides that the delineators need to be removed, we would extend the speed humps to the gutter pan on the streets. Next slide, please. Okay, so chapter 2. I had mentioned previously, as part of the pilot project, we also conducted an extensive data collection process to help quantify how well the measures contributed towards the goals of the project, including the changes in vehicle speeds and the numbers of people walking and biking to school. And tonight, we're fortunate to have Allison Mills here from the Oakland office of Tool Design Group. And her firm oversaw the data collection efforts. So with that, I'm going to pass the baton to Allison. Thanks.
All right. Like Patrick said, my name is Allison Mills. I am from Tool Design Group. I'm a professional engineer, and we oversaw the data collection and evaluation of that data for this particular project. Slide. An overview of the data that we did collect. We collected both volume and speed counts. This we did by laying down tubes across the roadway. They were down for fully 24 hours for 7 days in a row. We chose 5 locations in relations to the speed humps that we thought were, representative of the conditions of the other locations of the speed bumps. We also took turning movement counts, which we broke down into different modes, counted pedestrians, bicycles, and also motor vehicles. These were collected via camera for 5 hours during the day, 7:30 to 9:30 a.m. and 1 to 4 p.m. And we did this at 6 locations. These locations for both the speed and volume counts and turning movement counts can be seen on the map shown here. Slide. The data collection schedule. We collected a round of data before the installation of the traffic calming, and that was in November of 2021. And after installation of the traffic calming, we followed on with 3 separate occasions of data collection: May 2022, July through across to August 2022, and November 2022. Thank you. So this is a showing each location that we set up the 24-hour tube counts. And it really kind of gets into the granular of what it is we saw as far as the number of vehicles that were traveling above the speed limit for both before and after conditions, as well as the percentage. So as you can see, across the 5 locations, there was a reduction in the percentage of vehicles that were traveling above the speed limit. And so that was consistent across the 5 locations. Slide. And as far as the 85th percentile speed for each particular location, I'll note that using the 85th percentile speed is best practice when it comes to not only setting speed limits for a particular street, but also evaluating measures such as this. And the value is essentially 85% of people were either going at the speed limit or below, is what it's representing, just to clarify. And so, as you can see here, the 85th percentile at all 5 locations did decrease after the implementation of the traffic calming measures. Pretty consistently around 3 to 5 range, with 8 being the higher value change for the 85th percentile speed. Slide. We've got each location shown, and to the right on the slide, you'll see the location of the tube counter in relation to the nearest speed hump. And we've broken it down into day of the week as far as the daily percentage of vehicles traveling above the speed limit went. And so you can see at this particular location, we were around the 80% as far as before, and then dropped to around 20% after traffic calming was implemented. Slide. This is the second location, Silverado Drive, between Somerset Drive and Marywood Drive. In this case, to begin with, the percentage of vehicles traveling above the speed limit was around 55–60%. And afterwards, again, we saw a reduction around close to 20% of vehicles traveling above the speed limit. So, slide. Third location, Marywood Drive between Sandalwood Court and the school's driveway. This was one of the streets that was exhibiting beforehand, lesser number of vehicles going above the intended speed limit. And, but we still saw a reduction here close to about 10%, I'd say, as far as across the days of the week went. Slide. Continuing along, the fourth location, Silverado Drive between Marywood Drive and Indian Way. Again, you saw values beforehand for implementation of the project around the 55, 60s. And afterwards, we saw about 18% or so traveling above the speed limit across those days of the week. Slide. And then rounding it out with the final location. This location, Aurora Drive, I believe, between Burnt Oak Circle and the school driveway. Again, saw a reduction with speeds, those going over the speed limit around 65% to begin, with Saturday being somewhat of an outlier. And again, reductions to about 20% of traffic traveling above the speed limit. Slide. These are the values that we collected from the turning movement counts. Again, those were collected by camera for 5 hours in a day. Overall, we saw a slight increase in those both biking and walking. And in this case, for these particular locations, there was a reduction in vehicle traffic by about 50 vehicles in all three of these particular cases. Slide. These particular locations varied more as far as like what we saw when it came to like differences in pedestrian traffic before and after. Location 5 being a bit of an outlier as far as the reduction in pedestrians went, but again, still seeing that a similar trend, I'd say. Slide. And just to go over a summary of the evaluation, before overall, we saw 58% of people traveling above the speed limit. And afterwards, across the board, considering all the data collected, reduced to 16%. So that's a 42% reduction in the number of people speeding. As far as the 85th percentile speeds went, again, for people traveling 32 miles per hour, and then 27 miles per hour was the 85th percentile speed, considering all locations afterwards, making for a 5% reduction, 5 mile per hour reduction. Slide.
And that's back to me. Thank you, Allison. So as I'd mentioned, City Council directed staff at the August 23rd, 2021 meeting to work with a consultant to study options for a protected walkway to Burton Valley Elementary and then return to council with recommendations. And so we've done that. Slide, please. We had Tool Design Group assist us in preparing concept designs for this walkway, which would be sited on the west side of Burton, Silverado, and Marywood Drives. And just to give some background, concept designs are very preliminary engineering drawings. They articulate the idea of an engineering concept and can identify at a very, very high level the technical feasibility and the constraints associated with a proposed project, but they are not constructible designs. So I won't go into too much detail on this, and any of you are welcome to or encouraged to take a look at the drawings and then come back to me with questions, but a high-level summary of what the concepts produced. What was conceptualized is a 7 to 8 foot wide walkway along the west side of those 3 streets that I mentioned. Where there are existing walkways along that corridor, this walkway would connect for one, seamless walkway along that corridor. All driveways would remain accessible, though in some locations, some work would need to be done at the connection between the driveway and the street to account for grading. The walkway would be fully ADA compliant, meaning that design would meet the slope and width requirements and would include curb ramps at the intersections. And one of the major trade-offs associated with the walkway would be some parking removal along the corridor in those locations where the walkway design would be required to be constructed within the existing curb line, so into the roadway, essentially the shoulder area or the parking lane. So those are identified, those locations are identified on the concept design. And then I would say a secondary trade-off associated with that would be that shoulder area would be unavailable for use by cyclists. So cyclists would then need to travel in the travel lane. The high level cost estimate for design and construction of this walkway is approximately 2.9 million. At this point, I want to pause to emphasize that no further action will be taken if the community does not wish to have a walkway constructed in this neighborhood. So if the results of a survey in the community indicates this is not something that's desired, then this is where that project will end, or this portion of the project. If on the other hand, a walkway is desired, it's important to note that no funding exists for subsequent design work and construction. And there's only a few viable options for future funding, either grant funding, having council authorize the funds, or setting up some sort of assessment district for the community to pay for the walkway itself. And so if it turns out that there is desire for the community to move forward on that, then we would explore those options. But right now, there's no funding identified. So the next few slides provide the conceptual design drawings that were prepared. I won't go into too much detail because it's impossible to read. I'll just kind of go over some of what the highlights are and kind of how to read this if you want to look at it yourself. The top panel, which is the intersection of Burton Drive with Glenside Drive, has a giant X over it. Where I've got this on my computer so I can read it. And that is because that block or that street of Glenside is being addressed through a separate city project, the 2023 overlay project. And so there has been a public meeting about that project, but this would no longer be part of this Burton Valley design. So the concept designs generally travel, or they do travel from north to south. So this would be Burton Drive, starting at the intersection with Glenside Drive and moving down. And you can see some of the call out boxes there that indicate where the existing sidewalk is, and then where it says install sidewalk, which would be the new walkway. Driveways are identified here, as well as the locations as required where a partial driveway rebuild would be required to help meet the grade. Lane widths are shown here, as well as the proposed width of the walkway, as well as the number of estimated parking spaces that would be removed from that block shown in that panel. The curb line, the existing curb line, you can see in this case, it's the thick black line that's directly underneath the proposed sidewalk. And so you can see where the curb line is, existing curb line, as we go through the panels. Next slide. So this is just continuing down Burton Drive at the intersection with Apache Court. You can see the curb ramps that would need to be installed, and then the connection just south of there, where the existing sidewalk then continues along the remainder of Burton Drive. Next slide, please. So Burton Drive there, where there's an existing sidewalk that wraps around onto Silverado Drive, and then for a few hundred feet, and then the new sidewalk would be constructed. There is a call out here about some drainage issues and the requirement to relocate the existing catch basin in this location. Next slide, please. And then the sidewalk design would continue down Silverado Drive, pretty consistent design at this point. No, we're still on Silverado, and then it wraps around to Marywood on the bottom panel. And you can see some changes there at the intersection of Silverado and Marywood. Next slide, please. And then it continues down Marywood across the driveway with the school where you see the yellow crosswalk. And then continues further south. Next slide, please. To the intersection with Rohrer Drive. Next slide, please, Suzanne. Okay, and then next slide. So now that you've got all the information from us, I just want to describe the immediate next steps for the project. Next slide. So the immediate next step is for the community to weigh in on the specific traffic calming measures shown here on the top, and whether walkway construction is worth pursuing. And if so, is that dependent on the funding scenarios shown here? Of course, you're welcome and encouraged to weigh in on during tonight's public comment period. Staff will be using the results of a community survey to quantify the community's opinions about the decisions shown here. So staff will be preparing a survey that will be mailed to each household located within the limits of the pilot study changes. And this will allow each household to have an equal opportunity to vote on the project elements shown on this slide. And based on the results of that survey, staff will return to this commission with recommendations for next steps. Next slide, please. So this is the final slide. In the meantime, I've uploaded all the relevant documents to the project webpage on the city's website, and that's shown here. And would encourage you to take a look at, if you would like to see any more information, all the documents have been uploaded. And then, of course, please follow up and contact me with any questions. And with that, I pass it back to the chair.
Thank you for the presentation. I'd like to start with questions from the commission to staff or to the consultant. Anything on the staff report or tool report? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to ask for the turning movement counts. I saw that the camera locations were all south of Sandalwood. And so I wanted to find out, were you able to collect movements for children that would be going north on Marywood toward, say, Somerset and Burton Drive?
At each location, the turning movements would have been taken into account for any movement occurring at that particular intersection.
Okay, so you would have seen them going north up Marywood.
Right, yes.
Okay, thank you. I have one other question for the bike ped and vehicle counts. Is there a reason why you didn't aggregate the bike ped together to be able to compare them directly to the motor vehicle?
As in just add them?
Pretty much, yeah, just to be able to see the two, because they are kind of different buckets in my mind.
I think there was interest in knowing like specifically how many bicyclists and like how many pedestrians.
Sure, no, I understand. Yeah, and I mean, I can do the addition, but I just
Right.
wondered if there was a reason.
I don't
Yeah.
think there was a specific like intention around why we did or didn't do that.
Okay, thank you. I think last question I have is, for what you're seeing from the pilot and the mode shift, is 1 year a reasonable amount of time to get a sense of the mode shift? Would you?
I would say that's a reasonable amount of time to have something have been implemented and have conditions normalize. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Patrick, did in the evaluation, did the city receive any input, positive or negative, from police, fire, EMS with respect to the speed humps?
I didn't receive any input from the emergency services, no.
Get that, but we did from police comment. Police comment liked the speed humps because we don't have a lot of people to do enforcement. And these are, your sleeping policemen, so to speak. So we got that I don't believe we got anything back from fire, but we did hear that from police.
Okay. And then I also had a question with respect to the no parking zones, whether there was any police feedback in terms of enforcement, any warnings given, behavior from the community.
Really just early on at the immediate implementation of it. And just, it was more of a training and not citing, just training.
I have a question for staff. It's probably going to end up at Mike. I've been thinking about the speed humps, if they were extended and the sticks were removed. I've seen online images of speed tables and speed humps that have cutouts in them so that allows emergency vehicles to travel faster through a neighborhood. Is that something that could be incorporated into these speed humps?
That's not something you would incorporate into these speed humps, at least not in the speed cushion sense that those are designed for the fire trucks.
Okay. I also wanted to know if there is anything, as many of us have, we've driven over the speed humps. I drove over in both a sports car and a truck. I didn't notice a difference in feeling between the Burton Valley speed humps and those on Roar and Glenside. But I'd like to know from an engineering standpoint or a height, is there because some people have some public comment has come in stating that the speed humps on Roar are gentler. And so well, okay. So I wondered from the staff's perspective if there's any difference.
So the 11 that were put out, there can be differences because there's some hand forming, but for the most part, they're using the same template to build them. So,
okay. And just to make sure we're all understanding something, the pathway, it's been described as pathway and walkway. Are these all sidewalks, or are there some parts where they're just paving over in like a dirt area? Like a trail, example.
no, yes, this would all be a hardscape walkway of some sort. It could be asphalt or concrete, like a concrete sidewalk but that would be if you want to pursue it.
All paved, okay. All right, so that's the initial questions I had and we had. Oh, Vianney, go ahead. I'll repeat the question. So the question was, is it a multi-use pathway or just for pedestrians?
What I described on that concept design was pedestrians only.
All right, so we're going to move on to the opportunity for public comment. We're going to, as a reminder, the history at City of Lafayette is there's speaker slips at the back table. If you wish to speak, you should fill out a speaker slip and give it to Therese. If you haven't done so, please do that. After we go through the public comments from the people in attendance here, then we'll go to the people on the Zoom call. And I ask you all to please leave it to 3 minutes. Limit it yourself to 3 minutes. Thank you. Okay. We're going to start with Tim Keene, followed by Ruben Galindo.
Hi, my name is Tim Keene. I live at 616 Burton Drive. I generally support Mr. Folkson's dissertation on the subject. I don't like the delineators. I prefer the speed bumps, which I prefer to keep the speed bumps, to have them all the way to the road, to the side of the road. I think the walkway is a waste of time and money. If we can't spend $3 million in a better way than for 6 kids to walk in it, I'm surprised. But it not only does it impact the people on the west side of the road, it means everyone on the east side gets all the parking. And what does the postman do? What does the garbage man do? I mean, you're going to have all these problems, and I just don't think it seems like a waste of time to me. But I think something that I've learned in this process, which concerns me more than some of the other things, is that this whole thing was started when a few activists, for the sake of a better word, had the ear of both the council or the transportation people or you, and they said it's not safe. You know, all these people are, you know, like half the people were dying in Burton Valley from traffic accidents. And we go through this whole process and we find that at the beginning, there was no data. So we start this thing with no data rather than, let's have a look at the data first. And then let's see if it's worth doing. Let's not connect the data and then look at the later data. Let's find the first place. And now we find it's the safest place in Burton Valley, in Lafayette. And we've wasted all this time and money. And I see this not just in this study. I was listening to the thing about the roundabout the other night, and the expert says, oh no, we don't have any data on this. So we just go and do these things without any data. And then we ask the people what they think after it's done. And to me, this is just a ridiculous waste of time. If you're going to do a study, let's have a study to see if we need to do something before we spend all our time and effort. I don't know how much money you spent on this, but it's a lot of money in my view, and it could have been well spent somewhere else. Thank you.
Please refrain from clapping or making comments. Thank you.
Okay, well, my name is Ruben Galindo. Those delineators, bunch of crap. They look awful, and they don't do anything other than make our properties look like hell. Do you live on Roar Drive, Allison? Do you live on Silverado? Do you live on Apache? I didn't think so. But people tell us what's best for us, where we know what's best for us. We don't want this stuff. Speed bumps, cool. I can live with that. You know, but the deal is, you know, data. Okay, I do data reports. I can make anything look any way I want to. You know, the most important data that we're ignoring are these people right here. We're saying with our money that we spend on property taxes, we get gouged left and right. We see nothing with them other than people from the city council telling us what's best for us. And that's a bunch of bull. They pander to us and say, oh yeah, we'll help you. Oh, we'll listen to you. And then all of a sudden you do it anyway. And that happens all the time. Hopefully this will change because people spending time out here to come out here. I have things to do as well, but this is very important to me because I've lived here for over 30 years and I'm spending a lot of money. For what? I don't need a driveway, a walkway. My kids walked up back to school for 10 years. Well, I have multiple kids. And, you know, so the deal is, why, like the gentleman said before, you have one person, a couple people, you have a couple, this thing's turned off. I'll still talk loud if you want to shut me off. The deal is, we have a lot of people that don't want this. You still do it. One thing I would like to ask is that survey. Why don't you have somebody from our end, like Bill Folkson, have somebody to put this survey together correctly. So when it gets out to the people, it'll have a yes or no. Do you want this? Yes or no? Other than that last survey was pretty vague and it didn't make any sense. And you can manipulate whatever data you like by what it says. So that might be something to think about. Have, again, Bill Folkson or someone that he says would be a good person because he would represent us as well. And that's us. not you. That's about it. Just hopefully you'll listen to us and do what's right. The city council won't care about us. Hopefully the engineering group, I mean, even, maybe you will say, hey, you guys, calm down. You know, we're a safe community. We watch out for everybody. We watch out for our kids. We love our kids. We even love our kids' kids. We don't like. Thank you.
Are there any questions for the speaker?
Yeah, thank you very much for speaking. I have a question. You referenced a prior survey. What survey was that?
There was one online. There was. I don't know what it was. I was just. Yeah, and I was just told, and I filled it out, and I was going, man, you know, but if you do another one and you incorporate the people that actually pay the taxes here and that live here, Allison, the people that live here, ask them. So if
Thank
it's
you.
something like
Thank you.
this to help you out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Pete Duran, I didn't give you a warning. I'm sorry. I'll try to give everybody a warning. They're up next. After that will be Tom Stack.
Good evening. I want to make a comment. Data collection was fabulous. It gave you what it did, slowed everybody down. But at the same time, nobody asked the police department, but you never got any data input from the fire department, from the ambulance. I know why. Contra Costa County Fire Department, our fire department, doesn't answer yes or no, doesn't put any input. So I did a little math. 1.1 miles from the fire station of St. Mary's by Las Trampas to Silverado and Aurora. If there is a fire engine going through there or a ambulance, it'll take them at 35 miles an hour, they're in a rush, about 2 minutes. I have driven behind 2 fire trucks on Silverado in the last 2 months. The fire trucks stopped at each bump. Ergo, his speed will probably be about 5 miles an hour or 12 minutes to travel that distance. An ambulance will have to do it twice, going in, stopping, and coming back with a patient that might die because of 22-minute delay or 20-minute delay. You didn't get input from our fire department. Did you ask Moraga or Orinda Fire Department? That city has no speed bumps. Do you know that the city of Berkeley put a moratorium on speed bumps in 1992? And one of the main reasons was damage to the fire equipment trucks. So if you're gonna make this study, get the data from both sides. You didn't get it from our fire department. Go ask professionals. I'm sure that the fire chief over in Moraga, Orinda, would gladly tell you what the effects are on that. And lastly, have you thought about what would happen if we have an emergency evacuation in Burton Valley with all the speed bumps? We will not all get out in a timely manner. Somebody is going to die because of the speed bumps, because they cannot be reached by the fire department, by the ambulance, or conversely, we cannot get out because we're all backed up because of the bumps. That's all I have to say. And I hope somebody takes the time to get that information before the decision is made on yes or no on the speed bumps. Thank you.
Hold on a second. Any questions? Okay, thank you for your comments. Tom Stack. Followed by Vanessa Mancebo. Okay,
Is that doable?
yeah, it's fine.
Hi, I'm Tom Stack. I live at 607 Burton Drive. That is on the west side. Okay, I have a sidewalk. One quick question. Would you expand that sidewalk to 8 feet? Would you expand existing, you know what 8 feet looks like? And no bikes and no car. Do any of you walk in Burton Valley during the day? That's a basic question. Have you done so? Okay. Okay, Mike, cool. You should, it's your job, but the point is, people walk all day. My windows face the street. I'm now working from home often. I look out all day long. and I watch the traffic, I watch speed, I watch all that stuff. It's a sensitive street. It is a speedway. I understand what this gentleman said about speed bumps. That was always the argument why we didn't have them, was for fire and ambulance and what have you. And that's why when they popped up without any input from fire and ambulance, I thought it was curious. But I will say that it has slowed speed on our street more than any street in your study. It can be a raceway. It is the last way to get out of Burton Drive. So with all due respect, I don't mind the speed bumps if they're going to slow our street down in particular. I don't think it's bad. As to delineators, Tim, much respect there too. He lives on Burton Drive, but I think if you put them out into the curb, you're going to get kids that are going to be hitting those things while they're looking over their shoulder or something. You might see some bikes go down because of that. The delineators are horrifically ugly. There's no doubt about it. Maybe you can create a new way to do it. But if you extend those bumps out, people are going to trip on them, not paying attention. Some of our many walkers, and I think you're going to have bike problems with that. So to that end, even though I think, again, they're ugly, I think they should probably stay. Okay with the red paint, not a bad idea. It was my idea to put the fourth leg on the four-way intersection there at Burton Drive. Susan Candell came up and watched that with me, and I told her to stand and watch the cars plowing through it because people had to do a three-way walk around that. So that fourth intersection is a score. We like that. Taking away parking is silly. I know where we're going and where we want to go here with town, but you can't take away parking in front of people's houses. We like to have parties. I have music in my yard. People come over, they park. It's okay. They're all where they're supposed to be. Okay. 11 kids riding a bike to school. There was one less kid riding a bike to school after the speed humps. 11 kids are riding a bike to school. What parent would let their kid, I don't care where we are, ride a second grader ride their bike up Marywood to go to school? You know, it doesn't happen. Look at the bike riding to Stanley School. That's where you want to up those numbers, right? Bart's been on a bike he hasn't been in a car in 15 years. He's on a bike everywhere he goes. And I get that. But in this way, no one bikes to Burton Valley. Kids aren't doing it. Can I have Vanessa's 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Set the timer.
How much money was the sidewalks? $2.9 million for 8-foot wide sidewalks in a really chill neighborhood that the bikes can't be on now. Those kids are on the sidewalks now. If it's 8 foot wide, they're going to be on them then too. Okay. So if you want to police the kids on the bikes, I really think what I'm not hearing here, but what Megan Mittman and her team brought up really, to me, highlighted something that was more important than anything. The speeders that are coming through Burton Valley are late because they're coming from Saranap or down Snake Hill or somewhere further away. People aren't speeding down Roar when they live on Roar. Okay. The speeders come because they're late and they've got the coffee and they roll the stop signs. You don't enforce, and you never do. You just don't enforce. You don't put a cop on the corner, even for a week or a couple of days or whatever, just to get some data. You just don't enforce. Therefore, people are going to roll those stop signs. And all the studies you want to do and all the work you want to do is for naught, because you're not put a ticket out to the gals in the book club. Put a ticket out so when someone goes to their soccer game and starts talking about the fact they got a ticket going up Burton Drive, start doing some of that. Okay. You won't be getting people that live in our neighborhood. You'll be getting people from out of the neighborhood. You'll be getting service trucks. You'll be getting gardeners. Those are the people that are speeding through town. So just enforce a few. The word travels really fast. I know we have 2 cops on duty at any time in this town. So they're running around the boulevard, pulling people over or responding to activity down there. But once in a while, they could just park there and do a report, would serve a purpose. Really easy. What we're a little nuts about is that there's all this stuff and there's no common sense, like just do this. We're doing studies and we're dropping money and we're okay. But what Bill Foxon and everyone behind him, 400 names and counting, is saying is basta, we're done, and move it on. And don't you dare do School Street to Burton Valley. Okay, we're done. It's cool. Everyone's safe. Really. I mean, You know, we're all here now to tell you that we care. I'm calling recruiting people to come out. Butts and seats matter to you guys. And it's a simple deal. Okay, we don't need an 8-foot, $4 million boondoggle sidewalk in Burton Valley because no one's going to be on it. We just walk, people just walk, they say hi to each other. They walk after the kids go to school. It's just a groove. The dogs walk. Everybody's fine. It's really just fine. Is it fine? It's fine. It's fine. Okay, so thanks for listening. That's a big thing and it helps a lot. I feel better about that, but that's our message. Okay.
Hold on, is there any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you for your comments. Beth Foxen. And followed by, excuse me, that'll be followed by Gail Weritz. So okay, we'll hold that apart. Gail Weritz.
I'm going to be reading this.
Okay.
I've lived in Burton Valley since 1971, and our 3 children walked safely and biked to Burton Valley School and to Rancho Swim Club. Our beautiful neighborhood is now littered with no parking signs, speed bumps, and those unsightly white poles. We all want safe streets for drivers, walkers, and bikers, and this is a safe neighborhood. I was a member of the Marywood Silverado Traffic Calming Committee about 10 years ago. We considered speed bumps and expanding into the traffic lanes, but they were rejected after much discussion. Pedestrian crossing paddles were placed on Silverado and Marywood at the crosswalks. They were frequently hit by drivers, purposely, in my opinion, as a statement of dislike. Our committee asked the Lafayette Police Department for enforcement of speed limits multiple times to no avail. Then came Vision Zero, which is supported by a local vocal few and opposed by a great number of Burton Valley residents. This plan was unwarranted and did not meet the standards for implementation. Protected pathways with a berm would hinder the elderly and physically challenged residents and would be hazardous to all others, including kids on bikes. Please do not consider adding that to our neighborhood. The City of Lafayette and the Transportation Circulation Commission have chosen to ignore the concerns of residents, even though Burton Valley was deemed to be a safe neighborhood, as the studies show. Speed has been reduced by the bumps, but they seem higher and more jarring than the older ones on Roar and the newer one on Glenside. My old 2005 Honda is taking a beating even at a slow speed. The number of speed bumps should be reduced, lowered, and extended to the gutter with poles removed. I am so glad that those poles are not in front of my home. No parking signs should also be removed. Red curb painting is sufficient with enforcement. There should be no attempt to install new traffic calming measures. Once again, enforcement and education is the key. Every day while driving down Silverado, I see couples or moms with strollers and a leash dog who is often outside the fog lane into the traffic lane. I am coming up behind them while they converse or use a phone. I learned in kindergarten, you always walk facing traffic so you can step out of the way if a car comes too close. I would never walk with cars coming at me from behind. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I object to any new traffic calming measures in Burton Valley.
Any questions? Thank you for your comments. John Doerr. Well, to be followed by Adam Felson.
Good evening.
Welcome.
I'm John Doerr. I've lived on Marywood for over 25 years. I was on the same committee as the last speaker, and it was hotly debated. Sidewalks, speed bumps, flashing signs, all defeated because we didn't want it and didn't need it. Lafayette, Burton Valley is the safest community in Lafayette. And why the city council has continually, without data, come forward with all these recommendations, I don't understand. You're fixing a problem that's not there. Why, your own measurements today that you've envisioned, vision 0, we wouldn't even make the list to be attacked or looked at. So please remove the useless no parking signs because nobody pays any attention to them. I live at the entrance across from the Folksons to Burton Valley Elementary. I can tell you for a fact that 90% of the people coming out of Burton Valley after school make the left right on. Maybe a sign there saying no right turn. They're all going right around the pillars and making a left. Before school and after school, when people come to pick up their kids, they're right in the zone saying no parking, no stopping. How do those signs do anything? They're not helping pedestrians. They're not helping our kids, which they were supposed to give a clear area to walk. So please get rid of the signs and just leave us alone in Burton Valley. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you. So Adam's up, followed by Cheryl Rapp.
Good evening. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I'm probably the youngest in this room. And I did a little math. If I live the rest of my life in Burton Valley, that's 361,000 times that I'll be going over speed bumps. But actually, I'm kind of indifferent on it. It's just very interesting how we got here and how this all happened without so far anybody commenting yet that they're for all these safety measures. But I'm not going to say anything else that hasn't already been said. I just wanted to reiterate a comment earlier about having a police officer issue tickets. If this really was a problem, it would only take 3 or 4 tickets a day for that full-time cop to actually be not just a break even, but actually creating some profit. So why don't we try that before we go through, $3 million sidewalk. Thanks.
Any questions? No. All right. Cheryl. Followed by Jennifer Lieberman.
I'm Cheryl Rapp and I live at 4 Rupple Place. We don't live near the school, but we walk and bike on the streets, our family, every day. And so when we moved to Burton Valley, we chose the city, this part of the city, because we considered it the safest place in Lafayette. We wanted to live where we had wide streets, where we could ride our bike, where we could walk. That was the whole reason for coming to Lafayette in this Burton Valley area. But now with these traffic calming things, you have started to make it less safe for us walking. We walk the dog with the paddles. We can't even walk with the dog and my husband because the paddles are there. And then it's not smooth. So I've twisted my ankles on where this pavement stops. And then there's paddles. My husband rides his bike every day and he cannot, there's cars parked near the paddles. You cannot weave in and out of paddles and cars if you're clamped in. So you have to, as a biker, you have to go outside the bike lane and go over the speed hump to get around parked cars near the paddles. Well, cars don't stop for you. Even if you signal, cars will then speed around to the left of you and cross over the bump on the opposite side. So it's created a much more dangerous situation. The other thing is the speed humps. There is a huge difference between the speed bumps on Rohrer and the speed bumps on Silverado, the new ones on Merritt. You laugh here, but I have lived in this neighborhood for many years and there is a huge difference. But I can also recommend the ones on Rohrer, they go to the curb. And we walk those all the time. If I had a walker, there's a woman that lives on Roar that walks on them all the time. She does not have a problem going over the speed humps on Roar, tapered down towards the sidewalk. And you can go over it. And I've never once seen a car try to veer around them. But they need to be painted where the walkers are going, that this is a speed bump area for safety. So please, get rid of those delineators. They are the most unsafe thing in our neighborhood. The speed bumps, if we have to have them, they need to be like the Roar ones, not the new ones. And the no parking is a bunch of, that is none necessary. And that right-hand turn on from Marywood, going to Marywood Drive from the school, I have never once seen anybody go right after they pass the cone. They always take an illegal U-turn. So get rid of that. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer, followed by Abigail.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Lieberman. I live on Lucas Circle and I have 2 kids in the district. I have an 8th grader who started biking to Burton when he was in 3rd grade. And I now have a daughter who is in 3rd grade. As many of you who have kids, you have 2 kids and they're very different. So first, I wanted to commend the council on very bold and visionary leadership that you took in 2021, because you heard the need that was articulated by city staff, that we needed a protected pathway to separate cars from pedestrians and cyclists. And so what you proposed to city council was unfortunately not implemented. And I know we're here tonight to talk about feedback on what was implemented. So I, like many other people, saw the data. I think the speed humps have done what we intended them to do. I'm indifferent to whether we keep the bollards or extend the speed humps, but to me, it's very clear those have made a difference and we should keep them. What I kind of called the watered down treatment of what got implemented hasn't been successful, and it wasn't surprising to me. It is because there is no physical separated barrier between where kids walk and bike and the traffic. It doesn't make people feel safe, like they want to send their 8-year-old walking or biking to school. And so we made that decision because cars, there was no enforcement. So people were parking in the lane. When you walk down Silverado to Marywood, or I should say, when you're coming back from Burton and you're coming around the corner, even though there's paint on the road, cars still cut into that lane. And so that's a stressful way to either walk or bike from school. So we were a family that has not used it as much as we had hoped to. Finally, I just want to remind everyone that Burton Valley is the only elementary school. In fact, it's the only school in the district that does not have a protected pathway or walkway within half a mile of the school. So Stanley, Happy Valley, Lafayette Elementary, and Spring Hill all have protected pathways or walkways. And I sent the council and staff a video so that you could see this. I'm very curious to learn more about the survey you're doing and who it's going to, because I think we need to survey all users of our roads. And I'm very curious to look at what 8 feet looks like, because I do have a feeling that kids would ride on that proposed pathway. And that may or may not be okay, but it's something I'd like to explore as a parent. Thank you again.
Any questions? Thank you very much for your comments. Abigail, followed by Joshua Baker.
Hi, good evening, Commission. It's nice to see you in person. I don't want to, I'm listening to the comments and I feel like we're kind of going backwards in some of the conversations, and people who've been involved for 2.5 years have already talked about, what was the data that started this? There is no data. That's not true. There was a survey that was done by the city and that sort of kicked off this conversation. So I do think I don't want to relitigate all these things, why are we doing this? How are we here? But I do want to acknowledge that this council, this commission took testimony for hours and hours and months, probably over a year, to move forward with a pilot to test these various treatments. And I guess I want to provide some feedback on the treatments. And also, I really did want to focus a little bit on the survey, which was a new element of this to me when I was reading this. So again, I'm pleased with the speed humps. I feel like they've reduced speeds as a person who walks in the community, who rides bikes in the community, who has family, does these things. I feel safer with the reduced speeds. I don't have strong feelings about the delineators versus a speed hump going to the curb. I defer to experts on what's the safest and best way to manage this. I do think that we need to make sure that cars are not going around the speed humps. That happened almost immediately when the speed humps came in, and it was really dangerous. As walker, having cars swerve into your path or around you. So that we cannot ignore that problem when trying to adjust whatever we're doing with the speed humps. I appreciate the new paint, the new crosswalks that Tom Stack referred to has really helped that intersection significantly. I also think the vegetation trimming has really helped, and I hope that the city can stay on top of that in terms of sight lines and where to anticipate cars. I do think we are still missing a space for people to walk to the school. And I think what we saw with the removal of parking is that that is not an adequate treatment. It doesn't say that kids are never going to walk on a sidewalk or ride their bikes. What it says is that that is not a treatment that is effective for this community to feel safer. And that is what we learned. Or maybe kids will never walk, but that isn't what we've learned necessarily. I think it's really hard to draw a conclusion from what we've seen with the pilot, which leads me to the survey. We have moved away from traffic engineering by vote. That was what we abandoned when we let go of the community traffic calming process. So I was really surprised to hear there was a survey, but I was hopeful that maybe the survey was going to ask some more qualitative data. Why didn't you use this feature? Did this make you feel safe? Did it not make you feel safe? So that we can learn about why people's behaviors did or did not change. I also think the survey should go to all the users in the bike and walk shed of the area.
Any questions? Thank you for your comments. So it's Joshua, followed by Dorothy Moore. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, Joshua Baker. I live at 569 Marywood, right at Sandalwood by the school. I'm on the west side. I'm directly affected by all of this in a very negative way. I have to drive over these ridiculous speed humps. I have to look at the forest of white sticks. I have fallen 3 times on these obstacles now, and they're just when I didn't think I could be any madder about this process. There's nothing like trying to find my cane on the ground and standing up bleeding to prove me wrong about that. This whole thing has been a solution in search of a problem. We were safe before. We're safe now. The idea that we were going to improve on 0 incidents is simply not a thing that's going to happen. The amount of money we've already spent is appalling. The time, the anger it has generated in the community. And now we're talking about spending potentially $3 million, which is a farce because we know with inflation, with delay, with everything else, that's the starting number. To do what? Again, to improve on 0 casualties. This makes no sense at all. I am in favor of removing what has been put in. I don't think it has made a meaningful improvement. Certainly the white sticks that are such an annoyance should go, but the parking concept is simply atrocious. The idea that we can't park for emergency services, for the post office, that we are going to have to push our garbage bins across the street, that moving trucks are going to double park, and then all the kids, which you're now forcing into the street, are going to go around that, right? Gardeners, handymen, who are we kidding? And it's totally, totally unnecessary. All of this started because some people, we keep hearing about feelings, okay? I know people who feel like vaccines are unsafe because they contain nanobots. Feelings are a horrible basis for government. What we need is facts, and the facts show that this is utterly unnecessary. And if you're going to look at people's feelings, the surveys that you have seen show that 90+% of the people affected by this hate it. Please undo this farce and don't make it worse by taking away even more of our quality of life. Please. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you for your comments. I appreciate it.
Sir.
Dorothy, followed by Jeff Moore.
Sorry about that. I'm Dorothy Moore. I live on Silverado. I endorse Bill Folkson's proposal. I just wanted to stand up to say I really do want to emphasize the no parking signs are pretty useless. I think I've seen them create more hazards than they've corrected. For instance, I have seen parents come to a rolling stop while their kid opens the door and jumps in the car just to avoid actually parking. I've observed that. I have observed people when they were enforcing the no parking, when there was a meter made there or a police person, people would see the police car and then do a U-turn abruptly in the middle of the street. Somebody actually pulled in and hit one of the guide wires on a telephone pole, trying to avoid getting a ticket. And then we have new next door neighbors. They had their moving van double parked, the big Beacons moving van. I mean, you have to be able to move into a house and somebody's yelling at them to move the van on the other side of the street and carry the piano across the roadway. Trying to retrofit a neighborhood like this is not, it doesn't make sense to me. And then the few people who did receive parking tickets appear to be a gardener and a cleaning person. So it's very selective how this gets enforced. The people who actually live on the street don't park on the street. So you're really affecting the service workers more than anyone, I believe, with the no parking. So that's the part I wanted to really enforce. Part two, tangential, but there is actually a safe way to get to Burton Valley, which is to cut through the community center and through the park. And we've sat there and counted, and actually more kids ride their bikes and come up Sandalwood and walk through the community center than come up Silverado. And so I know we can't exactly endorse that because it cuts across somebody's driveway, but that actually is the safe carless way to get to Burton Valley. There is a protected way. And finally, I have a couple questions. The survey, Patrick, I know I can't ask you questions now, but if we could understand exactly who's getting this survey. And do I understand you correctly that despite all this discussion, it's going to be what the immediate neighbors vote on as to which elements of the pilot are selected? Is that what is the process we've decided on?
We'll come back and answer.
Yeah, so that's the question a lot of us have. Exactly who gets it and what the purpose of that survey is. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
Sure.
Question? Nope. Thank you. Hello.
Hi.
And after Jeff will be Brett Holden.
Hi, I'm Jeff Moore. I have lived in Lafayette on Silverado Drive for over 30 years. Certainly have walked and biked and driven all of these streets. Lately, it's mostly walking, occasional driving, and a little less than that of bicycle. I submitted my own evaluation in that I mailed it in, and it's part of the thing. I was trying to actually get data to at least understand how well this pilot was working. Mainly counting people who are actually using, well, I'm during school, to and from school times, I would collect data on everyone who was going back and forth. I first tried to do that right by the school and some of the locations that the cameras were picking up, but it was very hard to really distinguish those people who were getting picked up in cars. So it seemed like it was just impossible to really determine who was actively coming and going from school. And bicyclists, you could tell, but for the pedestrians, there's a lot of people picking up and dropping off at school. And there isn't enough capacity in the pickup lanes. To me, if you're looking for school safety, you really, either we need to figure out how to reduce the volume, which I think can be done in a number of ways that I suggested: carpooling, better busing, or or opening new schools and lessening the number of people that a large number of the people coming to Burton Valley are not from Burton Valley. And so that actually is, I think, adding to the pressure points. One thing I did find was that the numbers of pedestrians and bicyclists dropped from before the pilot to during the pilot, counting Burton Valley's the Burton Valley students that were walking or to and from school and bicycling to and from school. As my wife mentioned, the community.
Finish that thought, keep going.
Okay, I did some counting of the community center for a couple of reasons. One was as a control, because it didn't have any of these treatments. And secondly, because it was easy to count that it was unambiguous who was coming and going.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions? I also want to, I was going to do it later, but I did want to thank you publicly for your letter. I was quite impressed with and also your recommendations. So
okay,
thank you.
Sure.
Okay, next up is Brett, followed by Claudia Cohen.
Thank you. My name is Brett Holden. I live at 558 Marywood Drive, directly across the street from the driveway going into Burton Valley Elementary School. So feel that I'm directly affected. I find it kind of ironic that every single person here has spoken about the same thing. And unfortunately, I'm just another voice saying the same thing that everybody else is reiterating. I really don't understand why we got to this point that we're at. I appreciate your studies and everything, but I mean, we really are solving for a problem that did not exist, does not exist. Speeding, if there really was a problem, I would think that there would be multiple traffic tickets given in the area, police enforcement in the area. There isn't any of that because, 32 miles an hour, granted, it's higher than the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. I don't know that many tickets that are issued for going 5 miles over the speed limit. I do think the humps, they have helped. It's gone on my street. So the average speed of 26 miles an hour to 21. Great. 26 still didn't feel excessive, but we have done that. I don't think we're going to go backwards. So the humps are here to stay. Whether they go to the curbs or the placards, I would say a less intrusive placard would be my choice, not the white ones. I've heard that there's maybe other smaller options, which would be nice. The other issue of the no parking on that one side of the street, there are 28 no parking signs on the west side of the street. every single house has a no parking sign in front of it, and they face the wrong way. They face the street, so cars can't even see what they are. And there's so much writing on them. The one day that they tried to enforce the no parking there, I think everybody knows the police, it was a fiasco. It makes no sense to have those no parking signs there. People need to get in the queue to pick up their kids. I do live across the street. The number you identified in your study, I think there was 6 bikers that go to school. For walkers, for kids that walk to school, and I hate to say it, but kids don't walk to school. There are between 7 and 12 kids that walk to school on Marywood Drive and go up that driveway. Of the 7 to 12 kids every day that walk, do you know how many walk alone? An average of 3. They're all walking with their parents. Only 3 kids are walking to school there. It's too bad. And you might say, well, because they're worried about the traffic. I don't, people need to just relax a little bit. We don't need a extra sidewalk. We've got huge wide streets that actually, if people would actually go there and look, nobody parks on the street. Today, there was not one car parked on Marywood Drive between Roar and Silverado, not one.
Thank you.
So we have the room for people to walk. We don't need a sidewalk.
Thanks for your comments. Okay. Claudia. And then followed by Jamie Hessen.
Hi, good evening. I'm Claudia Cohen. We'll try to find something that hasn't been said yet. Well, for starters, I'm a librarian, and so my trade is research, and I research and research. And I firmly believe that the more research I have, the better, so that I can make an informed decision. And I feel like there was no research done prior to this pilot study. What was the data based on what exactly? That still eludes me. Burton Valley, 3rd safest neighborhood in California. 2021, Mike Moran, thank you, I'm going to quote you, said Burton Valley is the safest neighborhood in Lafayette. None of the Burton Valley streets appear on any of the city walkways or plans for like, oh, we need, enforcement or on the tool heat map or anything. So Burton Valley isn't even on anybody's radar for anything. Since between 1961 and 2021, 0 car caused accidents, 0. So why are you here? Why is all this happening in Burton Valley? I mean, I feel like we've been targeted by like aliens or something. The speed bumps. Yeah, they've slowed traffic down. Great. The bollards are ugly. I was just wondering if there's not a way to, instead of have the speed bump, just have a bollard like on each side so that, they can't go into the fog lane. But that's just an aside. What else? Oh, the speed bumps. I did want to say, I find it curious that Arinda Moraga and Berkeley don't have them, don't allow them. I did read an article about Paradise where 85 people died, that some people actually had problems evacuating because in downtown Paradise, they had put in some bike lanes, they had reshifted, reduced the number of lanes, so therefore people could not get out as quickly. And in Paradise, I read this quote so many times, we never thought it would happen here, but it did. And so Burton Valley, we get all the traffic from Moraga. If there were, heaven forbid, a fire, I mean, we would not make it out. And speed bumps, we wouldn't make it out maybe anyway, but maybe some people would without the speed bumps. The other thing I wanted to say, there were several months in the school year between 2021 and 2022 where there was no crossing guard at Burton Valley Elementary. And I live on 1 Burcourt, so I'm like 3-4 blocks away. No crossing guard on Marywood, crossing kids safely back and forth to the entrance of the school. None of the people who have been advocating for this stuff showed up to help. My kids don't even go there anymore. I was there volunteering. So if safety is that important, where were they?
Thank
The
you.
sidewalks, please, no more. Just go.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. After Jamie, you'll be David Martino.
Hi, my name is Jamie Hessian. I live at 518 Bavarian Court in Burton Valley. I used to live on Sharon Court there and had to get my kids to school all the way Burton Drive, Silverado and Marywood, and I can assure you everything went just fine. But I'm here just to reiterate some things about Vision Zero, and I'm standing up to demand that this process be held to the tenets of Vision Zero because the city has now adopted it. Vision Zero requires that no project should be considered without data to justify it. Vision Zero requires that the city must identify its high injury network and then focus its safety efforts solely on the high injury network. Vision Zero requires that no project should move forward without public support. Vision Zero requires that the city utilize cost-benefit analysis to determine the efficiency of any project. So going forward, the survey that is intended for next steps that is to be mailed to the Burton Valley community should not include polling on who should pay for the pathway, as the pathway has not yet been warranted. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
No, but thank you for your comment. David? Welcome.
Hi, my name is Dave Martino. I live in Marywood Drive since 1977. I want to state that I believe Burton Valley is a safe neighborhood. The walkways study you all did identified the top 40 streets that needed pedestrian correction. None of them included the Burton Valley streets of Marywood, Silverado, Roar, or Burton. I believe that we're safer now with the speed humps and some of the other improvements that have been done. I think the speed humps should be retained. I think they should be extended because I believe that the delineators or bollards are visual blight. Just see what you've done on School Street or what you're doing on the Rotary in Lafayette. Just awful. I believe the part-time parking restrictions should be eliminated. They've created, as Josh mentioned, unforeseen hazards to kids, drivers, residents alike, and is observed by many, including the police. I'm going to comment on the sidewalk project. Vision Zero requires that no project should be considered without data to justify it. Stakeholders in a project should be given full consideration, and the public should support it. The city council directed Tool to go ahead and do this project without any input. So what's wrong with the project? There's no supporting data, as I've said, okay? As such, we see significant problems creating the opposite effect. We would see significant reduced parking, 90+ spaces, pedestrians unable to walk on both sides of the street as they do now, including the cyclists being forced into the vehicular traffic because there's no other place to put them. And what we'll see is pedestrian hazards where crossing traffic lanes because of restricted parking. As an architect with training in land planning and architecture, I want to emphasize, I believe the cost estimates are significantly low. They do not account for escalation. They do not come close to reflecting all the changes and challenges that this project would need to address. They don't include the ADA impacts, in my opinion, and the total potential roadway rebuilding, plus the realities that this project would have on the safety and security of the neighborhood while it's being implemented. And essentially, I'm saying it's a bad idea. Don't move forward with it. Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you very much. We have 2 additional speaker slips. First is Lisa Furtado, if I got that right, if I read that right, followed by Michael Thompson.
Hi, thank you. My name is Lisa Furtado and I live at 135 Marshall Place. I'm deep in Burton Valley. I want to say thank you so much for proactively back in, in the beginning of this to just proactively and make Lafayette a better place and a safer place to live. Everyone should be so lucky to live in a town where a town actually wants to proactively do this for its citizens. And I just want to say thank you for that. Living in Burton Valley, my daughter, we've been living there for 10 years now. She's since gone on to be a 6th grader at Stanley. But seeing these last few years of devices of the speed bumps and with the vegetation, those things have greatly improved our experience walking to and from school. I would not let her walk to school by herself because of the blind spots that were at the corner of Rower and Silverado. There have been many times, even with like other neighbors and their kids, like grown-ups, close to getting hit because the cars just can't see them. So that has been a tremendous improvement. Thank you for that. I would like to address that, our community has changed over the last, 30 or so years. These days now, we have cell phone distractions, texting, calling on phones, reading messages, while, kids are walking, it could be me, you, elderly, young, old, it doesn't matter who it is, or whoever's walking on or biking along the side of the road. We need to be protected. And I applaud those speed bumps again for that. It just gives another added layer of protection for the people who are on the road, not in cars. We have a lot of the delivery trucks, and we're not just talking about Amazon. We have services for everything now, from like good eggs, produce, and perfect produce to like laundry delivery. That's like a 24-hour turnaround. And we have contractors and gardeners. Everyone's coming in left and right. They're just on a fast pace of, oh, I'm late, I gotta get there. It's just people are still going down fast on Silverado, past Rower into Bradbury on the last part of Silverado. People are still speeding there because there are no speed bumps there. So I just wanted to address that. There aren't just only the kids who are biking to Burton Valley. There are a lot more kids now who are biking to Stanley, and they start a lot earlier, from like 7:30 a.m. till about 8 a.m. that they would start riding their bikes to school. So in case if anyone's like watching, taking studies on that. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All
Oh, yes,
right, thank you.
thanks. Thank you.
The last slip I have is for Michael Thompson.
Hello, thank you again for meeting with us and talking to us about this. And I don't want to take too much time because everything has largely been said. I agree that safety is a lot of why we're here to talk about this. And I think that the reducing of the speed, which has been evident, has been a very big win for all of us. So I'm happy for that. When it comes to extending the speed bumps out to the curb, I get worried for the people who are riding bikes and also for the people who need assisted walking. And I think for those folks, extending the speed bump all the way to the curb would be a big setback for them, something that would be unwelcome and maybe unsafe and maybe inhibit their walking. So I think we should be careful about extending the speed bumps out. When it comes to safety, though, I look at the walkway that's proposed, and I'm an avid bike rider. My kids have ridden their bikes all in the neighborhood all the time. I don't know how they would ride safely on Burton Drive if there's a sidewalk that pushes them into the flow of traffic. And I realize that much of Lafayette doesn't have a margin for people to ride bikes. It is largely, a lot of our streets are like that, but Burton Drive is a highly traveled drive with kids and pedestrians. And if the bike riders, the kids especially, are being pushed into the flow of traffic, we're going to see very, I think, unwelcome outcomes from that. So if we are going to pull or send a survey out to our neighbors asking about this, I hope that in that survey, they can call out that this sidewalk will result in bike riders riding in the flow of traffic and young kids in that sense, and that hopefully that won't be something that be glossed over in their consideration of the sidewalk. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments. Okay. I don't have any other speaker slips, so I'm sure there's at least one hand online.
Yes, Mr. Chair, if you're going to Zoom remote attendees at this time, there is the first speaker will be Sharon Hunt, followed by William Folkson.
Hello?
Hello? Hello,
Okay.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, thank you. My name is Sharon Hunt, and I live at 629 Burton Drive, which is across from the first speed bump going into Burton. We've lived here for 20 years and have support the speed bumps as the traffic has slowed down. Burton definitely was a race area, but we do not support the elimination of street parking or any kind of sidewalk assessment. Several things on the street parking or the bike walkway. If it is for pedestrians only, as someone's mentioned, then all the bikes are going to be in the traffic lane. And I'm just wondering how if a third grader decides to bike to school and enters at Burton, they're going to bike in this traffic all the way to Burton. And then what's that going to do to the traffic behind them as all the parents drive around them while they're in the street? As has been brought up many times before, everyone having to park on the other side, residents visiting, gardeners, garbage cans, everyone having to walk back and forth across the street is making the area significantly less safe for everyone who lives here and for any users of the bike lane. Also, for all the events at Los Trompos, Rancho, and Burton Valley, I want you to know where all those people are going to park if one side of the street is no longer available for parking. They'll be parking all the way up into Marywood to go to events at Los Trompos or at Rancho, which will create all kinds of traffic or crossing the road issues. I believe when the no parking on Marywood was enforced, it was a total mess. They need that space to pick up the kids. Having no parking means the traffic backs up into all different places. We are for keeping the area safe for the kids, but believe with the speed bumps that is enough. At this point, any additional measures will make the area less safe. And we would ask the council to listen to the residents who actually live here 24/7 and do not want any more changes made, especially a biking path. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you for your comments.
The next speaker will be William Folkson, followed by Chris Schofield. And we've noted that as Beth Folkson has ceded her 3 minutes to him, Mr. Folkson will have 6 minutes to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. First of all, I need to apologize deeply to all of my friends and neighbors who are in the room that I could not be there in person. Nobody wanted to be there in person more than I did. And talk to Beth later and she'll explain why I could not be there. Our group, Burton Valley Safe Streets, of which many of the people in the room are members, took a survey of our neighborhood. 76%, and you've seen the slides of that survey. I can't show them to you right now, obviously online. 76% of those surveyed, 281 people surveyed in Burton Valley, think that you have hurt their quality of life since the pilot study was installed. 82% view Lafayette City government as the enemy. 92% think that the Lafayette City government and its administration do not have Burton Valley's common good and best interests at heart. And 82% of those surveyed think that you are actively working against the rights of seniors, the elderly, and those with physical disabilities. That's essentially the breakdown of the social contract with our local government. And I'd like to discuss the social environment in which this occurred. About 2 years ago, we had an open house in the community. Mike Moran hosted it. About 40 people showed up. And kudos to Gail Werrett, from whom you heard earlier. She asked the first question. And she asked Mike Moran, what is the need for all of this, what it then was referred to as the BERM project? What is the need for the pilot study? Mike's answer was, cars are made better these days. I then asked Sia Shovath, who was the engineer in charge of the project at that time, what data did he have, what he collected that showed a need for the pilot project, the pilot study in Burton Valley. Sia replied that he had 3 PhDs in mathematics, but he had absolutely no data to back up this project. At that time, that meeting was held in the middle of COVID. About 40 people showed up. Nobody was wearing masks yet. Donald Trump was telling us he was going to cure us by advocating that we drink Clorox and shine a UV light into one of our bodily orifices. The Coffee Park neighborhood in Santa Rosa and Paradise in Northern California had both just burned down in flash wildfire. Shortly after, Lafayette was declared a high wildfire danger area, and just check your fire insurance rates or try to get a new policy these days. And our concerns expressed then about the relationship of speed humps to evacuations were summarily dismissed. Single-family zoning was eliminated in California during that period. We were told to expect 2 to 4 plexes to be developed and built in our single-family neighborhoods. Accessory dwelling units, ADUs, were encouraged and put on fast track in Lafayette. A trailer popped up in a local backyard at the same time as on-street parking was proposed to be eliminated. Cameron Burks resigned as the city council member, and the other city council members interviewed 3 other candidates to replace him. I sat in on the interviews out of curiosity. Candidate Wee Tai Kwok was asked to give his vision of Lafayette. He expressed that he envisioned a highly vertical city comprised of high-rise buildings, high-density, low-income buildings with no parking, no cars, and bikes and pedestrians only. And I said to myself, wow, this guy has no idea what Lafayette is about. A few days later, the other council members voted him in. The city lost its lawsuit with O'Brien Construction, which cleared the path for construction of 300 plus apartments at the terraces on Deer Hill Road. The state required the city to develop its RHNA housing element, which called for an additional 2,000 various dwelling units in Lafayette over the next 5 years. The city's general plan was updated, with some asking for references to the city remaining a semi-rural environment to be eliminated. However, the semi-rural description still exists to this day. At various city council meetings, council members made statements like, I don't see why there should be any on-street parking in Lafayette, and the future of Lafayette lies in bikes and scooters. Tool Design sent a report to the city detailing hundreds of proposed traffic calming and pro-bicycling pedestrian measures, one of which was to eliminate 1 lane of motor vehicle traffic on Moraga Road downtown and replacing it with a bike path. The city adopted Vision Zero, a plan that has failed in accomplishing its goal in any US cities in its history. It's been described by the New York Times as a war on cars. Vision Zero has nationally accompanied a rise in accidents, not any decrease. In the local implementation of Vision Zero, no Burton Valley streets were named as targets for pedestrian improvements. School Street was turned into an industrial zone among a sea of white sticks. Secretive plans to do the same to Topper Lane were revealed. The traffic circle was turned into another sea of white sticks, making the old three-way stop sign there look pretty good.
Could you hold on for 1 second, please?
Yes,
Now, was
I
that,
don't have a lot more.
was that the first or the second? Okay. Quickly
I
finish.
do not have a lot more to go.
Quickly.
And, okay. And I can always ask for somebody else in the audience to contribute their 3 minutes. What would you prefer?
You have 1 minute.
Okay. 8 wild boars were living in the community center park. They rampaged through Burton Valley for 2 weeks. The police would not help or respond. That was a safety hazard. So our city has been under an existential attack on all these fronts. Our neighborhood's lifestyle, culture, character, physical structure, safety, semi-rural ambiance, and architecture are all under siege. And on top of it all, you created a pilot study with a made-up problem with an illegal anti-senior and anti-people with disabilities fix that only created more problems. The pilot study never complied with either the traffic calming handbook or with Vision Zero basics. It had a professional advisor tell us to go ahead and violate the ADA laws because, quote, ADA violations are less expensive to defend than wrongful death lawsuits. And still, we can't get you to stop this absurd process. Why? 2 years of this nonsense.
We need you to wrap up, please.
2 years of this nonsense is enough. We don't want to live in Berkeley, San Francisco, or Walnut Creek. If city agencies are destroying and transforming what is unique about the rest of Lafayette, go ahead. But leave us alone in Burton Valley. We will not let you destroy it.
All right. Thank you for your comments. Any
Thank you.
questions? Any questions for the speaker? All right. Thank you.
Can I ask a technical question?
Yeah.
Is this the only speaker for the whole room? Is it just me? Is it
I don't
loud
know.
right here?
I'm not aware.
Is it?
It's too loud.
It's pretty loud right here. Okay, thank you.
Next speaker.
The next speaker is Chris Schofield, followed by Steve Manusich.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I will be brief. I think there's been a lot of good points made. I just wanted to make one additional point as it relates to the unintended consequences of the families and kids on the opposite side of the street from a proposed pathway. And I've made this point before, but obviously, any kids or families now have to cross the streets to get to the pathway. This would create line of sight issues for these kids. Everyone talks about deliveries and contractors and mail and all that, but my concern would be, families visiting your home, high school drivers, now anyone who's visiting a home or leaving a home on the opposite side has to exit their house directly into the street, which obviously would be a lot less safe. So that was just a point that I didn't see being made that I think should be taken into account, that regardless of your viewpoint of making it safer with a walkway, you're making it less safe for kids and families in the immediate neighborhood opposite of the walkway. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. No questions. So thank you very much.
The next speaker is Steve Manusich. There are no further speakers. If anyone in the Zoom audience wishes to ask a question, please use the raised hand feature. Thank you. Steve Manusich.
Did it work?
Hello, you can.
Hello?
Yes, yes,
Yes,
go ahead,
hello.
Steve.
All right, thank you. I'm Steve Marusich. I live at 638 Glenside Drive at the entrance to Burton Valley. I've been here for about 15 years. Both of my children biked and walked from our house at the beginning of the proposed improvements all the way to Burton Valley with no problem for 4 years. I think the speaker who talked about feelings is really the one that hit it on the head. The data shows that there are no issues. The area that we're talking about is safe. And trying to implement solutions to make people feel safer is just an exercise in futility. I think a lot of the improvements with the traffic humps, it's lowering the speed. I think that is a good thing. The impacts on emergency services is something that has to be considered. The rest of it really should go. The walkway, even though it says it's for pedestrians only, bicyclists will use it. The other thing to remember is there are probably about 50 driveways along that stretch of road between the two ends. And there's still going to be cars going in and out of those driveways and interacting with pedestrians, which have, quite honestly, poorer sight lines than anything else. Being out in the street is actually safer for bicyclists than being up on the sidewalk. So that's all I wanted to say. I think the community has spoken. I hope the council listens. I was also on the call on Monday, and even after all the public comment, the commission's decision seemed to be to proceed because we can, not because we should. And I hope that is not something that happens here. Thank you.
Well, thanks for those comments.
The next speaker is Peter Connolly, followed by Fred Watson. Go ahead, Peter.
Hi, thanks very much. Like most of the speakers tonight, I don't like the changes that have been made to Burton Valley. I would suggest, as some other speakers have tonight, that the evacuation in the case of emergencies would be a much better focus for the Traffic and Circulation Commission. I would formally like to suggest that that would be a good use of funds and effort to not only look at the evacuation plans for Burton Valley Elementary School, but Burton Valley as a whole. And in the context of Moraga and downtown Lafayette, how would an evacuation work for our neighborhood? And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your comments.
The next speaker is Fred Watson, followed by Ginny Ellis.
Hi, I'd just like to say, I'd like to, I guess, reiterate that I object to any new traffic calming measures. And I think the signs are the biggest eyesore, and they don't serve a purpose as far as the no parking signs. And I'm against the dedicated pathway. I think that I'm not sure what brought the study about, but I know that a young child was killed due to his own intentions there at the base of the entrance of the school. And I think that that needs to be addressed. I think you need to just put a stop sign or do something that addresses just that sole issue of, well, you had a fatality. What have you done about that? Not make up a bunch of stuff that circumvents that. Just how do you stop that from happening again? I think if you put a stop sign there, that would take care of that. And then I guess in the future, I don't know if this is the right forum, but if you guys would do a study where you could use the trail that goes from the back of the elementary school, what used to be called Marywood Fairview, to the ball fields, make that a dedicated path for students so that they could ride a bike. Any child that wants to ride a bike to school can take the Lafayette Moraga Trail and then go ahead and ride his bike up to the school. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ginny Ellis.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. Hi, my name is Jeannie and I live on Topper Lane. However, my family actually lived in Burton Valley, in the heart of Burton Valley, just several years ago. And my kids who were in kindergarten and third grade at the time walked to Burton Valley every day, elementary school, along Silverado and Marywood. And even today, living on Topper Lane, my kids bike to Rancho because they're part of the swim team there on a regular basis. And I just want to comment that yes, while I am giving you one data point, my kids and as parents, we have always felt comfortable with our kids walking to school, as well as now even biking to Rancho along the Burton Valley neighborhood. But the thing that I want to express is I want to reiterate, what many of the community members have been talking about around the frustration that you're hearing from the community that this work got teed up without any cause or without any data. And in fact, I hear that the city, is pursuing a public survey and wants to explore a sidewalk. And I'm so perplexed why we're even wasting time and money to be having this conversation when there has been no safety issue. And I want to reiterate, we had a local roadway safety plan that included analysis of data and a broad public survey, and Burton Valley didn't register on the top 10 priority locations. So again, I want to support and reinforce a lot of the comments that you're hearing tonight. Please don't pursue, looking into this stuff because it doesn't make sense. It is a waste of time and money. And please take to heart the frustration that you're hearing from the community members that the city does not seem to be working in the best interest of the community members. And I know you guys have heard this as well from those of us on the Topper Lane project too, where the city has already secured funding to put in a pathway on Topper Lane without even having any of the data or any of these discussions as well. So again, thank you for hearing me, and please, stop pursuing these wasted efforts.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Speaker, I see no further hands raised in the Zoom audience.
Okay. Then we'll end, at this point, we're going to end public comment. And then I also, if it's okay with everyone, I'd like to have a 10-minute recess. We follow the practice of every 2 hours, we should have a break and walk around. So it is currently 8:03. We will resume the meeting at 8:13. Take your seats, everybody. Okay, thank you, everybody. And before we start, I wanted to say thank you to not only people that spoke tonight, both here and present and also on Zoom, but I wanted to thank all the public for your input through the many emails. You know, there were a lot of really thoughtful, you know, in addition to expressing your concerns or your direction on it, there's also a lot of very thoughtful comments in some of the letters that I think in generally we're going to go back and look at. Now for tonight, what was set forth in the staff report was to come up with recommendations. It says, recommend that staff distribute survey. This is staff's recommendation was we should come up with a recommendation that staff distribute survey to quantify community feedback on specific traffic calming elements to remove or retain. And also staff should return to TCC after survey evaluation with a recommendation on how to proceed. So before we get to any of that in-depth or discussion on those points, I'd like to open it up to the commissioners to either ask additional questions of staff or comment on anything that they've heard tonight. Okay, see if that works.
Oh, it's working. The biggest thing that I understand is speed. Speed is a real problem. No one talks about 25 versus 30 miles per hour. At 30 miles per hour, it's less likely that you can survive a collision. At 25, you can do somewhat better. And that's why speed exists. And that's why we should think of it that way. It's really the focal point. The rest of it, that's really my comment. Oh, yes.
Do you have any questions or
I could add one more thing. I am visually impaired, and cars that goes by me when I walk are very scary when they go very fast. And so that's also part of it. I'm sure I'm not the only one here, but nonetheless, it's scary for pedestrians with cars that go so fast. Thank you.
Just to clarify, are we talking about the recommendations now, or just if we have additional questions for staff?
I would just questions for staff or comments on what you've heard.
Yeah, well, I would echo what you said. I thought we had a lot of thoughtful speakers tonight. There was a lot of information in the public comments that was, very helpful. I do think that there's probably a general consensus on some recommendations going forward, but obviously we'll hold those to a further meeting. One thing I would like to see if we could get more information on from staff is what options there are on the delineators that, I think in general, I'm saying in general, I've heard that people don't like the posts. But then there were questions about if we extended the speed humps all the way out, there's issues with mobility. If we don't, there's issues with, cars trying to go around them. I just don't know if there are any other options or not, or if it's just posts or no posts. So Mike, if you have an answer now, or, if there are options to explore later.
Chair, is it okay to respond to that at this time? So I have studied this, and one recommendation from the community was, well, let's not have these ugly white sticks there. Can they at least be green? It's just something I heard. So I wanted to research it, right? And really, they shouldn't be green. They should be white because it's the shoulder of the road, and that's what you have to see. They do have green ones that are used in other paint and sticks kinds of things, but they're to delineate a dedicated bikeway. So that's not an option. So the only comment I mean, there's trade-offs no matter what you do. If we were to extend those speed humps, they do taper down to 0, so they wouldn't be as high as the middle of the street. I mean, they'd start at the same height and then they'd drop down. There are examples of them on Roar. And if I could clarify an earlier question that somebody asked me, are the speed humps on Roar different than the other ones I put on? I interpreted that as you were only talking about the new speed humps. The question was referring to the new speed humps because we did put one new one on Roar, and my answer was it's the same. I now understand you meant the other speed humps that were put in 1999. Okay, those are definitely different. Okay, I'm not completely crazy. Okay, those are definitely different. That is not the standard, and I'm sorry I didn't understand the question exactly, because we did put one on Roar as well, right? So anyway, to that, I just wanted to clarify that I don't think those are the same. They're not.
Yeah, I wanted to thank everybody for their comments tonight. I think we heard you very loud and clear regarding your your interests and your concerns. There are some comments that were made that resonated with me. I think this issue regarding the impact, potential impacts on emergency vehicles, I think is a good question. I think that Mike addressed the police response to that, but I think that we should spend more time talking to fire and ambulance just to see what the potential impact might be on them. And I do agree that police enforcement is very important, not only at Burton Valley, but really at all the other schools. I think that's something that we should get more of, and that's something we should follow up on. I did have questions on the height of the speed bump, but you just responded to that. And the speed bumps that were installed, are those within Caltrans state specifications?
Yeah, that is a standard the city's been using in many other cities. They're between 3 and 3.5 inches tall. They're 12 feet wide. So as you drive over them, you'll drive over 12 foot of a bump. They're 3 to 3.5 inches tall.
Okay. And as far as the markings for those speed bumps, I know that the paint is marked directly on the speed bumps themselves. Is there anything that can be done ahead of them, just so they're more clear as you drive towards them? Is that?
So there can be, but it is more striping. It's more stuff on your road. If you want an example of something you can do, I did it because we put speed humps on Happy Valley Road near Happy Valley School. And I added some lines that basically go from a bar and then it V's down like 50 feet in front. Not typically what you do in a neighborhood. You're already only supposed to be going 25, and then in most vehicles, you can go over those at 15 miles an hour.
I understand.
Yeah.
And I know the neighborhood is concerned with the amount of striping, the amount of paint and everything. I just hate to be surprised by speed bumps. So that's where that came from. The comment or the suggestion from, I believe, Mr. Moore on using the community park or trails within the community park to get to the school, I think is a real interesting one and a good one. In fact, with my daughters and I, we used to ride from the community center to Burton Valley School going through the park. So with improved trails, that might be a good solution too, to get people off streets, if that's a concern. Anyway, again, thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you. I just want to thank everyone in the audience and on Zoom for coming out to express yourselves and talk to us, and we are listening, and I really appreciate you being here today. I have a question about the speed humps that are installed right now. Can the profile be changed? Can it be altered a little bit to match those older ones?
So, I mean, they could, right? That's up for discussion. I would say this is a standard, and once we put this type of speed hump in, we immediately received 2 complaints that they're either too high or they're not high enough. And it's literally 50-50.
Okay, thank you. I support Commissioner Carr's interest in having some information from Confire. I heard one of the speakers and read their letter about what they thought the response times would be from the fire station to, I think, Roar, Silverado, and I would be interested to know what the Confire experience is. I think that would be helpful. And I think those are my questions for now that are not about the survey. Thank you.
I've got some comments for after we have figure out what to do next. I feel good with all of the very in-depth deep input we've received from the public. So at this point, we need to talk about what to do next. The recommendation was to have a survey for community, get feedback from the community on what items to retract, specifically outlined in the staff report. Some things would be retained and some things we could get rid of or change. First, I guess the question is, are the commissioners comfortable with the approach that was outlined in the staff report? Or would you like to discuss that? I think you alluded to that, I think, Greg.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think more feedback's always good. I think we've gotten a lot of feedback. I think there could be recommendations, but I do think it's worthwhile to have, a direct survey to the neighborhood, although I would like to explore if there's an option to receive input or feedback from a wider variety than just neighbors located immediately adjacent on those streets. There's a number of different constituencies that utilize the Burton Valley neighborhood. So I don't know if it's possible to have something like the LRSP where the public can submit comments or input, via the city website, in addition to just mailing surveys directly to folks who live in that area. As Commissioner Carr stated, I think direct feedback from fire, police, EMS is necessary, to inform further decisions. If there is a survey, I do think adding some questions or some sort of opportunity for input regarding police enforcement would be useful. And I think those are my thoughts right now.
I think that simpler surveys are better in terms of people responding to them and then our understanding what that response is. And I think what is proposed in the staff report, which is basically a question of retaining or removing 3 primary treatments of the pilot, the speed bumps, the delineators, and the part-time parking restrictions. And then in addition to that, the question regarding the pathway construction, I think is pretty straightforward and is easy for the community to respond to. So I'm basically in support of that. I think that we're not in a position right now to try to rejigger this. And certainly I wouldn't think it would be helpful to the process to make it more complicated. Maybe add an additional comment section or something like that, but basically stay with this simple format. I think it would be a good approach.
I do agree, and I definitely think that there should be a comment section. I believe one of the goals of the pilot was to collect perception of safety data. And so that might be the best way to do that. I think, I'm sorry if you already said this. If you did, I agree with it, which is, I think there does need to be a question of, are you in favor of a sidewalk in that area? Not just, does the community pay for it or does the city pay for it? And I do have a concern that a survey to residents along the facilities won't reach all users of those pilot facilities. And so I think that's something that we need to explore. I don't know exactly what that group, that segment of the population would be. I don't know if it's the Burton Valley enrollment area. There's a number of families that live to the north. I think one of the things that was envisioned for some of the traffic calming as part of this pilot was that it would be easier for, more comfortable for parents who would normally drive their children straight up into the school grounds to maybe park further away and drop and let them out and walk to school. And so I'm wondering about how we could maybe capture information or feedback from parents like those. And I think those are my 3 thoughts on the survey.
Those white sticks are really ugly. I will agree with that. But let's not lose sight of the first reason is to keep the speed at a certain lower, because too many people drive like mad right now, even in my neighborhood. So speed bumps or whatever you want to use to slow down the traffic is really the most important. Then, I mean, surveys, of course. Anyway, that's my thought.
Thank you for your comment. Okay. I just had a couple really quick comments. One is there's been comments about Vision Zero and this and how we need to apply Vision Zero. I want to remind everybody that Vision Zero was officially adopted in November of 2021, which is subsequent to the pilot project. But I agree with you that I think that we should apply the principles of Vision Zero to our decision-making process. So I hear you on those comments. There was also a comment from one person about Topper Lane, and I wanted to say that in terms of transparency and so forth, many of us on the commission and many city council, well, some city council people that I've talked to are concerned about transparency in the process that we're going through on some of these projects. And my opinion is we never went out to try and push things over on people without their input. We had many public meetings, and I'm just saying that I personally am not trying to force solutions down people's throats. I think the speed humps, to Vianney's point, are terrific because there's a clear correlation between speeds and traffic accidents and injuries, especially injuries. So I'm very happy about the speed bumps, less happy about some of the other elements. And the last thing I wanted to say was, it's well known that the city traffic calming process needs to be revised, and that was added to this commission's work plan. We don't know the timing of it, but I think that gets back to why we're trying to do this survey. And I know that you've had a traffic calming process many years ago. For the purposes of where we're at right now, I think the survey that was proposed was kind of in line with that idea of trying to get a final buy-in from the community on what things that are optional, not really citywide engineering solutions. So those are just my thoughts on it. So at this point, I think we should do a roll call or a vote, whether or not, first of all, should we amend the recommendations that were in the staff report, or as Bart was saying, simpler is good, and go forward with those. If I hope I didn't mischaracterize that. So I guess the question is, should we vote on, kind of encouraging or authorizing this city to do a survey about the two items listed on page 4 of the staff report? Go ahead.
I think something that we could do that wouldn't complicate this would be to actually, following on what was suggested earlier, is to ask that under the pathway construction, ask whether the neighbors want or those surveyed want a pathway or not. I think I know the answer, but anyway, I think that rather than focus on how it's going to be paid for, just ask if this is something that that you would want to see constructed. And then the other thing that I think that I mentioned was, and another commissioner agreed with, is to add a comment section. So those would be the two changes.
I got a question.
Yeah.
I didn't read everything, but the pathway goes from where to where? That you're talking about.
Well, yeah, in the staff report, there was this about the pathway that was outlined in the report.
Okay, but I'm asking, it goes from where to where? Sorry, but
The Patrick, do you want to describe that again, or should I?
The limits
of the proposed sidewalk.
So the limits are the west side of Burton, Silverado, and Marywood. From Glenside Drive on the north down to Rohrer on the south.
No, I'm in agreement.
Okay. All right, then. Sorry. So I'd like to entertain somebody providing a motion that we proceed with staff recommendations with the modifications we discussed. Pathway construction really having a yes or no question, and adding a comment section.
Is that the motion?
That's a motion.
Isn't that the motion? I
Okay.
second that.
Okay, is that all right? All right, then let's do the roll call. Vianney?
Aye.
Bart, Greg?
Aye.
Bart?
Aye.
Stella?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So I really do appreciate everybody's input on this process, and a lot of thoughtful comments over several meetings. Okay. So that is the item. Let me find my agenda. That is 7A. Normally at this point, we go into commissioner and staff reports. Let's start off with the easy. Let's start with Patrick. Do you care to say anything for commissioner and staff report section?
I don't have any staff reports tonight.
Okay. Stella or Greg, do you want to, either of you, discuss GPAC or LRSP issues?
No change since Monday night.
Yes, I know. Nobody was really prepared. Yeah, Stella?
Yes, so I can give a brief update about GPAC, which is the General Plan Advisory Committee work that's happening now to update the city's general plan. The GPAC is now working on the safety element, which addresses how the city responds to and supports residents with respect to natural hazards. There will be a meeting of GPAC on Tuesday, March 21st, at which we'll be discussing a draft safety element plan, element meaning chapter, that will discuss some of the actual details with respect to hazards in the community, such as where are the earthquake faults, liquefaction zones, et cetera. And there'll also be some discussion about goals, policies, and programs that the city might be able to implement to support residents. And that meeting is at 6 p.m. and it will be live in person, and I believe it will be held in the Arts and Science Discovery Room. But if you're interested in attending, check the city website first to be certain. That's all.
All right, I had two things to share and then an ask of staff. So first, I wanted to highlight that in the city council meeting, on February 27th, there was an item 10B, which was a presentation by Chief Aldrich to the city council, talking about and requesting approval to get certain new tools for the department. Of course, it wasn't a money ask. He had money to cover that in his own budget. But if you can either look back at the YouTube recording or look at item 10B. I think that was an interesting presentation. Also, during the funding item 10A, there was a comments by and also public input by email from Kristen Altbaum. And she brought up again the issue of streetlight data. And so I would like staff at some point this year to come back and really talk to us again about what kind of new technology, what kind of data is available to us on streetlight. She had mentioned some costs that didn't seem hugely onerous, but I would like to learn more. And I'm not endorsing her approach necessarily. I just think that that'd be good. You know, we had laid out in meetings several years ago about the need for adopting new technology, and I think that it would be worth looking at that. Mike?
I'd just like to point out that we have had a subscription to streetlight data for 1.5 years.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that. Okay.
Obviously, there was Kristen Altbaum.
Okay.
So we have, it's a good tool.
Yeah.
Our subscription that we pay $10,000 a year for is highly subsidized by the Contra Costa Transportation Authority, highly subsidized. So you're right, it's a very expensive tool and we would have to do a cost look, but it provides a lot of data really quick. Patrick has already utilized it. We've had consultants already utilize it for that Pleasant Hill study and for some others. So it's a tool we have right now. And perhaps we could do a better share, as you just suggested, on maybe what it does and what it doesn't do.
Yeah.
Because I got the feeling listening to the comment that they think it just provides the solutions. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It provides the data that tells you have a whole lot of vehicles at this period of time.
Yeah. No,
where they're coming from and where they're going to. So it doesn't give you the solutions or the money.
No, I get that. I thank you for clarifying that. Thank you for that. And I guess that's really the ask I was going to ask actually was I forgot to bring this up in the meeting. In Mr. Foxen's letter, there was a discussion about old, outmoded, illegal, faded signs and so forth. And it would be great to ask, I don't know if this would be a job for Matt or somebody else, but it would be great to follow up and see if there's actually any changes that need to be done on that in that regards. All right. That's all I've got. I thank you again for everybody being here. Oh, yes. Sorry.
Driving with my friend coming down from the freeway to the roundabout.
Yeah, Pleasant Hill Road,
Thank you.
southbound.
And it's closed, you have closed the lane at one point. And we both agree for cyclists it's much safer. Unfortunately, most of us think in terms of cars, because then it would open up, there would be less backup. But for cyclists, it's so much safer to have that lane, that slip lane, as you call it, closed, because that way that slows cars down. Less friction also for cyclists and cars.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was my comment.
All right.
I couldn't drive, but my friend
yeah.
was driving and he said, absolutely.
All right.
We think too much in terms of driving rather than thinking about pedestrian or thinking in terms of pedestrians or cyclists.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's 8:46 PM. This meeting is now adjourned.